Right, hello, welcome to the Sisyphus Complex Solution episode 5. Who'd have thought I'd have got this fucking far? Anyway, some more observant of you and that might realise I've got a shirt with Aston Villa on. There it is, that side. And for those of you that know me from LinkedIn, you will know that I no longer support Aston Villa. I'm only wearing this because I've spent about £1,000 on shirts over the last 6 months or so, and I'm not a wasteful person. I'm not going to throw them all away. It just means that I won't be supporting the team anymore. Ever since they came back from the lockdown period and did their finishing off of the season, and they all came out wearing Black Lives Matter on their shirt and started taking the knee at every game, and I cannot stand in association with people that will give support to communists. So simple as that, really. It's a shame after all the years that I've supported them, but ho hum, that was up to them. I did give them a warning beforehand, but their problem. I'm sure they'll think that's my problem as well, but you know, somebody's got to have some bloody morals and ethics, haven't they? Right, going to do things it's still a continuation of the process and everything is that I've been looking to present with this series of programs, but it's not going to be a direct follow-on from last week's, where it was very data centric, because there's a couple of pieces of information that need to be exposed, I suppose, and to give a few ideas. But before we do that, I wanted to move into a bit of feedback. There you go, here's my pathetic attempts at a little bit of production here. There's been a few pieces of feedback so far. I've had my 18 subscribers, my huge popularity of 18 subscribers, which dropped to 17, possibly because I've put up some stuff on LinkedIn recently and that has probably pissed a few people off, of which I do not care. Some of the stuff has been pretty good in terms of comments under the actual episodes themselves. I will give a shout out to Christina for that. Most of those contributions come from her, and it works out that it's really good because she's making comments about how political what the political situation is and how things are formulated within other countries, and that ends up being a really good thing, because as much as I'm making the pros example on the basis of the UK, that's dealing with things on a micro level, but then on the macro level, of course, we're going to need to understand how other countries are operating as well. And that, so when it comes down to future processes where, say for example, one of the policies of getting rid of the United Nations and all the tentacles, when you get rid of all of the tentacles, that means getting rid of the World Trade Organization. So having a macro understanding, and for everybody to be having a similar type of conversation on their own specific needs, not trying to do a copy and paste all over the place, then it gives us a good perspective as to how we can take things forward on a country by country basis and what's the best way to work together. So I think that kind of understanding works out really well, and I'd like to see more of that. So, you know, spread it, share it, do whatever all that stuff is that I said that I didn't really want to say. I've had some more unusual feedback than constructual feedback, in terms of I've had one person that has told me that it's very monotonous, for which I would say is my God-given right as a Midlander to sound monotonous. Simple as that. I'm not a bloody TV presenter, you know. I'm not that way inclined. Things might change as we're going forward, and I mean, you have to understand, this is me sitting in front of a bloody camera. I'm not having a conversation with somebody in real life, so the level of animation that's going to be coming out of me is going to be a bit limited, because you do tend to feel like a bit of a prat when you just talk into a piece of fucking plastic stuck up on the top there. So the level of animation from me, and that is, yeah, it ain't going to be too much of it. It is a bit monotonous. Concentrate on the fucking detail, because that's more important. So anyway, a really bizarre piece of feedback, and I'm going to have to give a little bit of a shout out here to, and I'm going to jump into the language thing again for anybody else. Don't be thinking that I'm suddenly just talking gibberish. But out in Japan, Gokiburi-san, omae no se, tsugi no yuu koto wa omae no se da yo. Right, so I had a very, very, very unusual request that I would probably get more followers and become more popular if I was to take off my shirt. If I took off my shirt, then I would have more gay people that would follow the series of programs. Needless to say, I won't be following that piece of advice. Very, very fucking bizarre. But then it did come from a bizarre individual who I've happened to have known for, Christ, a good 30 odd years now, I think. Yeah, maybe a good 30 years. But I always knew he was a weirdo. But then I did have another piece of information that came through to me to say the level of detail that I present and put together kind of suggests that I could do with a hobby. Fair comment, but unfortunately this is my hobby. What can I say? I like doing shit like this. If I'm not going to the pub, this is my hobby. And going to the pub at the moment is bloody miserable. Everybody's sat there looking like their fucking life is about to end. It's awful. They've destroyed the atmosphere of pubs and I really don't like it. But anyway. But I thought I'd give another little piece of information around the types of data, because as much as you might think that I'm some sad bastard that puts together all of this information around government and how everything is supposed to be put together on a process basis, which is effectively my job anyway. I'm doing it on a company basis, so I would do say for example a bill of process of a company so that they understand the different roles within an organisation. So for example, you have different departments within an organisation that could be running much more efficiently, and that if they had certain equipment that was shared. You can find out this type of thing through having a bill of process for an entire company. That works out very particularly well for things like Industry 4.0 developments. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail, but anyway. So it's what I do. But there is another thing that I do as well. This particular sheet, and that is only given a very, very, very tiny proportion. If you look down the bottom of the screen, I think my finger points roughly at the screen there. This is a very small part of the data. Have a look at the bottom and that. There's information there with the sheets that go all the way back to 15th of March. And this is all the COVID data for every single country that's been reporting. So 213 nations. I've got the data on a daily basis. Well, except for the two later entries and that, where I've done that on 9 and 10 days respectively, because frankly I did get a little bit bored of doing it every day, because I was for a period of time I was providing those reports on LinkedIn on a daily basis to show the sheer extent of the anomalies. Those anomalies do still continue, by the way, and it's also notable from this particular page that I've decided to choose that the UK continues to be the shittest lack of healthcare system in the world. So that's always nice to know, isn't it? I would say that I do anyway, but in terms of the blame for that, as much as we can turn around and say, well, okay, it's the government's fault for doing this, that and the other, it's also the NHS and their system of bullying people, and also the staff themselves for not having the balls to stand up and say, what the hell are you people doing? Because I do know of a funeral that took place a week ago, I think it was. And no, it wasn't a COVID death. It was some nurse that, I mean, she was only, Christ, what, not far off my age. So she was, I think she was 53 or 54. Suddenly died of cancer. And the funeral had an exceptional attendance for doctors, nurses, and all the people that, obviously, friends and family and all this sort of stuff, but a very large contingent of NHS people. And the dominant conversation was how sick and tired of the situation they were, which included high levels of disgust with the fact that if you're a private patient, if you're prepared to pay for your elective or anything like that, no problem, you can come into that NHS hospital and you can have the work done. But if you are just the average taxpayer that pays for that bloody hospital to be there in the first place, you're not allowed in there. So you've got all these doctors and nurses that are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, and that's why you end up with all those fucking TikTok dance routine videos, because they're doing bugger all. So that's the reason why you end up with such a shitty bloody mortality rate. And I will explain to anybody that doesn't understand, the mortality rate that I've got on here is literally from cases reported, deaths reported. That's all. So the mortality rate, even though that does come out at 14.88%, in real life, you're looking very much more around the 0.03%, I believe, is the core size of things and that. But I mean, if you looked at as a percentage of the population, it then becomes 0.06%. So again, not the sort of shit that you'll get on the BBC. So anyway, thought I'd give this a little bit of mention of some feedback and the fact that my hobbies stretch in terms of data collection and data analysis beyond just this political sphere. There's a whole range of different things that I do. But anyway, to move on. Oh, that moved on without me hardly doing anything. Doesn't matter. Right. When I've presented the map of what government looks like previously, I listed the government departments, all of the agencies, yada yada, and put out the picture, cut it down by 40% to get rid of replication, and then started to show what the budgets were for each department. I'd only gone through the one department so far and 4 of the agencies that are listed within it. I have done some other work on that subsequently. However, there was a very important piece of information that was missing from within those agencies, and that is the National Audit Office. It's not listed, it wasn't listed on there, and it becomes quite a critical piece of information. Another new drink, by the way. This one is Irish whiskey with ginger ale. Very nice. Highly recommended, especially with Irish whiskey. But anyway, so the National Audit Office, that should be, and in my database now, the National Audit Office is listed the way that it should be. There should, to my mind, be links and transparency on the government website to let people know about the National Audit Office. Now, they put out a report on it was in July of this year. So July 2020, I can't remember the specific date, or I haven't got it written down, put it that way. And that was showing the whole year accounts for all of government, though they do have separate reports as well on a department by department basis. Now, this was a report that was to show the accounts, audited accounts, so again, slightly different from your standard. And that was up to March 31st of 2019. So you're looking at 2018, 2019 as the period that they're reporting on. The strange thing within that is that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going down to some sort of conspiracy theory here in terms of why would they be reporting certain information that has got nothing to do with that time frame. They did report this in July, so I'm assuming they're including this because of the importance of it. They've put at the front of their report a list of all of the different expenditures. No, that way, that side. It's on that side of the screen. Which you can, I mean, you're not going to be able to read it, but as per usual, I'm not going to keep repeating myself on this sort of thing. All the links are in the description. You can click on it. You can get the report yourself. Have a look and check it out in the detail. They've listed all of the different areas in as much as possible. There are a couple of them missing as to expenditure for covering this Ponzi China virus. Strange thing about it, especially for an audit office, is that they've come up with, in their figure within the report, they suggest that the government has allocated 124.3 billion, and yet from the numbers that they've stated on there, I calculate it to be up there 149.8 billion. Very, very different, and I would expect better from an audit office. So that's a problem for me. So again, in terms of the transparency, accountability, so forth, which will then move forward in a little while, and that into another new policy. Now, the reason why that figure becomes incredibly important is twofold. First and foremost, because of the numbers that I have at the top of the screen that I've already shown last week and the week before, in terms of what the entire annual budget is intended to be. Now, if you looked at the period that we're in now, so I think we should be going into the 2020-2021, 92 billion. So, I mean, this has covered way more than an entire year already, just for this alone. And how that becomes any kind of logical based policy development is just, it just massively defies belief. Not only because of the fact that this money is now going to be allocated to, it's not just the people on furlough or anything like that, this is money to businesses and all this sort of stuff as well. And there's another page that I'll go into in a moment, and that goes even further. But this is, it's going to be, it's going to destroy things for such a long period of time, and for those future generations, which then results in this dependency on government. Because the key problem that you're getting with this is not only are you increasing this amount of debt, having a ridiculous amount of spending, but you're also then, because of they're destroying businesses. And there are businesses all over the place going bust. I think in the just in the last 2 days alone, there was a report of another 750,000 people that have lost their jobs, which means that your budget for the revenue that you're expecting is going to go down, and your welfare bill is going to go up. So this is going to be nowhere near. And how somebody comes to look at things from the cost-benefit analysis perspective without having some really outrageously ulterior motive along the lines of this great reset bullshit, I just don't understand how anybody could even contemplate doing something like this. I mean, this is literally going to be seeing people die for years to come as a consequence of this. It's outrageous. Now, when we look at that figure, where we need to be very, very careful, and again, other countries are doing very similar things. You're all being subject to the same shit that we are. You want to be paying attention to these kinds of numbers, because it's going to get an awful lot worse, and there needs to be that accountability for it, because we come into areas like this particular article, and I have heard even worse than this, but I've just concentrated on this one for the time being. So that 149 billion, I think it was, is now suddenly going to become a trillion. 10 times the amount. Where the fuck did that come from? To pay, to do what? Based on what? And for how long? And why? It's just, it defies belief. It actually does defy belief that people are not, especially on mainstream media across the world. You have all these people going, oh, you know, I mean, bloody New Zealand is probably the worst one of all. And that's, oh, you know, we've had 4 cases, so shut the entire country down. Retards. I mean, seriously, fucking retards. This is going to be absolutely fucking devastating to everyone. I mean, is there not anybody out there that is not realistically understanding the damage that this is going to do? And the number of deaths that you're getting from this Ponzi fucking China virus are going to be minuscule compared to the deaths that you're going to get from this. I mean, not only have you got a system at the moment that is based on not providing any healthcare whatsoever, which is why you're getting people with cancer that are dying, people that have got regular flus and pneumonias and all sorts of ailments that always happen, not receiving healthcare anymore, so therefore they're dying. But you're going to do this as well. And so, yeah, you're going to end up with, I mean, it's intentionally pushing towards depression, which, to my mind, as much as I'm well aware about all of this, and again, I've mentioned it before, and like this great reset and all of this bullshit, it does go back a long way. Anybody wants to care to look into the discussions with Kissinger and the managed decline of the West? If this isn't an intentional decline, I don't know what the hell is. There is going to be, if people don't really start to get a grip and start to say no more, you might all think that you're being all wonderful virtue signalers right now, and oh yeah, I'm going to put my nappy on my face and do as I'm told every 2 minutes by some totalitarian twat. And you think everything's wonderful. You are literally making your life and everybody else's life an absolute fucking misery for years to come because of this. And it's massively unjustified. Oh, it's worth it if we save a life. Great. Save a life today, kill 10 million tomorrow. You fucking idiots. Absolutely outrageous. This is probably one of the key reasons why I've started doing this channel, this program, whatever the fuck you want to call it. To start looking towards how we actually get alternatives where you actually have somebody with a brain that says this is how things work, this is where things are going wrong, this is how you stop morons that don't seem to understand basic bloody human decency and get them the fuck out of the system. It's absolutely outrageous. So, this is detail that's going to be needed to keep an eye on. Referring back to the COVID data that I keep, I'll be keeping an eye on that because I'm going to be keeping track on the deaths. Because when you end up with this type of plan and managed decline and all that sort of shit, you also end up with the eugenics freaks who are always behind all this sort of bollocks. So, for nobody to realistically understand what the hell is going on is just, it's not on. There's another part. When I've been looking into the budget from the Cabinet Office, which is the next department that I'd started to look into, I'll come across that, again, from the National Audit Office. They had a report specifically for the Cabinet Office during that period up to March 31st, 2019. Cabinet Office spending of 655 million. 655 million within a Cabinet Office is either A, unnecessary, or B, is for vanity projects. Vanity projects is the example that I've got on the screen now. So, this is a particular project that started in 2016. When you sit back and you've heard the stories about, well, they've started to do track and trace. They're looking to be installing all of these new systems and that to be able to gather more data and more control over people and all this sort of stuff. And this Ponzi virus has been the perfect opportunity to be able to start installing that. That's what this was that started in 2016. It's the exact same system. And it's called Verify, hence the name of the episode 5. This particular system ended up getting criticism from the National Audit Office because it massive overspend, shit results, as all government programs of this nature always is. So I mean, this is one of the clearest indications that if anybody needed it, again, every time government does these types of programs, it always fails. Now you'll have people from government that will turn around and say, well, this was supposed to be just for government employment, you know, the public sector and all this sort of stuff. Nothing to do with any kind of wider initiative. And yet one of the key criticisms was that they'd had a target of 25 million users by the time of, I think it was by 2018. Well, considering there's only 7.2 million people working across the entirety of public sector, that's bullshit. So again, a lot of this stuff has been planned for a long time that they've been trying to implement. And it was all handled directly through the Cabinet Office. Not through one of the agencies, not through anything like that. Now, what has happened with this is, like I say, it failed fucking miserably because they don't know what they're doing, as always. And it has been handed over to the private sector, which is why you're probably going to now turn around and see, I mean, I know that there is one particular real fake company that is being promoted by, what's her name? Sarah Phillips and Mike, Sarah Tyndall, I think her name is now, because it's Mike Tyndall's the husband. They have no idea what they're getting involved with, because the particular company they've decided to stick their name next to is full of career criminals. I mean, these are people that are, they've been opening companies and closing companies and taking money off taxpayers and just running off with the money for something like 25, nearly 30 years now. Started off with the father ripping everybody off, and he's taught his son how to do the exact same thing. And those two pillocks have gone and stuck their name by the side of it, and that to promote it. But this sort of stuff now is being transferred over into the private sector, and specifically, links in the description again, you'll be able to check for yourself. It's now being used by Barclays, Digidentity, Experian, the Post Office, and Secure Identity. They're the prime users for it now, and it is now being developed even further in the private side. The chances are that it will more than likely be in the hands of somebody like Accenture, which means again it'll be the exact same thing as the Cabinet Office. They're probably feeding money through to them, and that's so, you know, oh, we need money to develop this because, you know, big companies can never pay for their own R&D, and it will more than likely fail as badly as these people did, because companies like Accenture are shit as well. So this gives you a bit of an idea as to why you need to be digging into the type of data that I do dig into, because I've never heard anybody mention this. I've never heard anybody say, why Why has the Cabinet Office got 655 million of our money on vanity projects that are all based around developing systems to control us? This is worthy of question, and it's worthy of us understanding that when we're putting together a government that is fit for purpose, this sort of shit ends. So, I think I'm getting quite sweary this week, aren't I? Maybe it might not be quite so monotonous, eh? Yeah, whatever. Right, so let's take that one forward then. So it'll start a little bit of entertainment on the screen for you, so it's not quite so monotonous. So I have added from the 4 that we had previously at the end of last week, I've added the production of department, agency, final accounts, not just budgets. But I'll go a little bit further with that as well, because the National Audit Office, as I say, the fact that they've presented numbers which they have then failed to add up correctly. When you take a look at it yourself, you'll find that as much as the reporting is detailed, it's not in any kind of regular format that I think is acceptable. If you want to have a piece that says, well, we're going to try to analyse some of the data, which, yes, I understand is part of an audit. Analysing some of the data is all very well and good, but it's that actual final number and how it's all presented accurately and with more transparency. So again, making sure that there's a link within the government site to say this is where you go for our audited accounts. There should be a link there. This type of policy, I think, helps people to develop a transparent system, and one that you can start to have a little bit more trust in. And you'll also find that, like with that vanity project, Verify, you'll get a bit more idea as to what it is that the people in Cabinet are up to, and whether their manifestos, or assuming all 17, I dropped by one, but never mind, all 17 of us get together when we're all running the world, that we can actually prevent that kind of nonsense going on and say, well, look, we can actually say this is what we're doing, and there is no hidden agenda there. We're not suddenly taking a massive amount of your taxpayer money and spending it on your decline and controlling you. So it's a small development again, but like I say, we're only a small way through things. But when we do start to actually have people that have hobbies that look at things in some level of detail, you might start to think for yourself, well, you know, what policies would I want to see implemented? Because I want people to make the comments and say, well, from the information that we've seen so far, you know, don't go too far ahead of yourself. Stick with the case-by-case basis of what it is I'm actually discussing, and say, well, within that particular framework, my policy suggestion would be X, Y, Z. Obviously, as I said before, and if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you I don't agree with you. But at the end of the day, it's not up to me, is it? And it should never be up to an individual person. Otherwise, you might as well be another one of these fucking BLM Antifa bloody communists, because that's all they're going to end up with. So, that's that bit. I might be moving a little bit quicker than normal. It feels like a bit quicker than normal. So, I have now got a minor piece of entertainment for you, which is the introduction.
Fuck off! Who you think you are, you cheeky fucking twat!
Love it. F.O.W.E.F.U.N. So, that was I thought that was a minorly amusing little bit of introduction to this part of Fuck Off to the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. So I'll go with the United Nations first this week. As I've shown you previously, the map, insofar as what the United Nations consider to be the map, I thought I'd start by giving a bit of details as to the individuals as well as the organisation, because it is a threefold scenario of the extent of the organisation, the individuals involved with it, and then the type of shit that they're trying to have shoved through. Now, if you remember 2 weeks back, I did about the paedophiles, and the response that came from Antonio Gutierrez. So I thought I'd concentrate on him this week, because unsurprisingly, yet another bloody socialist. Now, this will be a very common theme amongst all of the tentacles of the United Nations. I don't really understand what part of all world governments getting together to say, right, we need an organisation that we can rely on as a central point for us all to get together and to discuss the world issues and make sure we don't go into yet another massive war or anything like that. And you stick it full of the exact people that have been the biggest fucking scourge of this world over the last 100 bloody years. What moron thought that was a good idea? I can tell you a few who thought that was a good idea, but well, we've ended up with this prat. So this genius is the one that thought that joining the euro in 1999 was going to be a good idea, and yes, he does get the blame for all of this, because as I've got it at the top, 1995 to 2002, his fucking fault. A whole bunch of other bloody countries in the European Union are that bloody stupid as well, but he had the opportunity to say no. But then he's a socialist, which means he's a fucking retard, doesn't know what he's doing. If somebody turns around and tells him to do something that he's going to probably get a few pennies in his back pocket, he'll take it. And it has meant that Portugal has really been in massive decline during the years subsequent to joining the euro, and they've struggled to get anywhere close to getting out of it ever since. And the problems that have been highlighted in the second article box there, it is a continuation in Portugal. It's not just this prat, but you'll notice from 2000 to 2007, the tax policies in particular really caused problems for Portugal, and he falls in line with those first 2 years. So subsequent people have basically just followed on with the same bullshit that this idiot came up with. I mean, I don't really understand what it is about any country that seems to think that having anybody that's a socialist in charge of anything is ever a good idea. I mean, how many more examples of history does somebody need to see before they stop being a retard and going, we know that's a really shit idea, we know it doesn't work, it's economically retarded, and then at worst we're going to end up all being bloody killed? Because that's what you get with socialists and communists. Everything is wonderful and that while you're spending somebody else's money until everything runs out, but then you just fuck off and get a job at the United Nations instead, eh? How the United Nations has been, well, how all nations have accepted this bloody organisation to be run by socialist morons, it fucking defies belief. But I want to move on to something else with them as well. All of the crap that you get around the we can't tolerate any wrongdoings and all this sort of stuff. You know, we've got our sustainable development goals, which includes everybody's got to be able to change sex and blah blah and all that bullshit, and climate change, which as I pointed out last week, factually speaking, in terms of science, doesn't fucking exist. And yes, I would argue with anybody on that point. This prick will actually know somebody that is responsible for sexual harassment. Now, when it comes down to sexual harassment in the United Nations, as I pointed out a couple of weeks ago, that generally tends to include paedophiles and all the rest of it. They seem to just, was it 8% employment of paedophiles? This prick will be informed of these things and just go, no, doesn't matter. Let's just keep employing them. And it's this is to do with this Colin Stewart out in the United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara. The fuck business is it theirs? And this fella is a bloody sex pest. And what does Gutierrez do? Doesn't matter. Forget all of that. Let the fella carry on. Give him a younger child as well, why not? Give him some kids to look after, why not? There's a very distinct link between these people and paedophiles and sex trafficking. There seriously is. And I wouldn't put it past this prat for doing it. So, as far as I'm concerned, the United Nations, scum. Get rid of them. So, let's move into the World Economic Forum part of things. This week I'm basically going to the alphabetical side. Up until now, I've had the first attack at YouTube itself, and Google and Alphabet and what have you. All the same people. I had my admission of the unfortunate, my favourite, my bias with Toyota after that. So now I'm going to go on the alphabetical basis and go AP Moller-Maersk. When you've got the World Economic Forum that is telling everybody how to be ethical, moral, we're going to develop the world governance where we know how to run the world. We're the wisest people in the universe. Now, what you are corrupt scumbags. All of these very, very large organisations. I'm sure there's a lot of people that think that I'm some sort of far-right bloody extremist or anything like that. I'm not. I'm sure as hell not. I will criticise corporations as much as I will governments when they deserve it. And this company deserves it because they do get caught up in corruption. And then, especially when it comes down to all of this bollocks around, the recycling and we have to, again, moving into that sustainability development goals and all that sort of bollocks. That all goes out the window when they can get some cheap shit done in India that ends up killing all of the people that are involved because of the types of outrageous treatment that the employees get, the types of chemicals that they're exposed to, all this sort of stuff. But it doesn't matter because we're just trying to get rid of our ship, send it off to India. Doesn't matter if a few of them die. But we'll put up a BLM flag and go, oh, diversity, and everybody has to be lovely, lovely, and just use bastardisation of the English language. Everything that these people say is the exact opposite of what they do. So, I will call out, I'll just call them Maersk, most people call them Maersk. That's what you generally see on the side of the boats. If these companies don't want to be named in things like this, first and foremost, withdraw from the World Economic Forum. And second of all, get your fucking act together. Simple as that. So, I think I might have actually got through today's one as quite quickly. Not sure, I haven't checked the time yet, but it doesn't matter. So that's the basis of this particular episode, and I might have had a bit of a rant and a rave, and who knows, that could be down to the Irish whiskey. Never mind. Possibly a little bit more animated for you, for anybody that's all concerned about being a monotonous Midlander, for which I would say anybody that looks at James Dellingpole, he did a recent interview with a young lady, can't remember what her name is, Claire something, I think, where they both come from the Midlands, and gave the entirely accurate description of how people from the Midlands are humble, but considerably of greater value than most other locations within the UK, for which I have to agree. It's a fact. What can I say? The development of industry, the heart of the nation, all comes from the Midlands. All decent products come from the Midlands. Don't come from London. You know, you can argue the fact and it will fall on deaf ears. Doesn't matter. So have that for a bit of monotony. So I think that will pretty much wrap it up for today. Not sure what the episode will be next week. Like I say, I've got to continue on some of the details of the financials of the various agencies underneath the Cabinet Office, because there's a few more than the previous one that I forget what it was now. I've only done a couple so far, and that's so I think I've got something like about 10 or 12 agencies to look into. But again, start providing some feedback. Start getting involved. Don't worry if you're not from the UK. Make some suggestions if you think that you've got any worthwhile ones, and preferably not about taking my shirt off. Anything along those lines. And as per the last few episodes, I'll be finishing off with the mired directory. Again, no change. Same companies being promoted without any financial or recommendation as such. You know, I'm not getting paid to advertise these companies. They're just companies that have promised not to be complying with all of these bullshit agendas that are out there. So if there are any other companies out there that just want to be honest people, let me know, and I don't mind sticking a bit of a note on the end. And then people watching, when you look, I know that when it's an end of a program, you might think, well, what the fuck would I want to watch that for? You can just pause it at the right point and go, well, this is a particular service I'm looking for at the moment. Press the pause button. There's some details. There's the website, or there's the contact details. Get in touch with them and find out. Okay? Not difficult. It's not rocket science. None of it is. But ideally, let's keep moving forward. I'll keep providing as much information as I can, and ideally we start to develop a government plan that can be presented to the wider public, where we can say, well, look, this is a serious option. We've actually looked at everything. We actually think that we know what we're doing. We're not just screaming on a single issue. All of the problems that people think that they've got, for which the vast majority of them are false flags anyway, we've actually got something that would work. It's not left, it's not right, it's not formed on some bloody the latest ideology coming under the name of bloody Karl Marx. And we can do it on the basis of hopefully other countries doing something similar, because we've all got the same problem. We're all whining about various different things, but we're not really doing anything about it. So pass it around, have conversations with people. You don't necessarily have to you don't even have to recommend this to other people, because you might find out that if it's not done in 2 seconds flat, they get bored. But you can have the conversation with them, find out if you think that they've got a good idea as well, then pass it, put it in, give it a go. Right, so before I sign off and that, I doubt that they'll get this far through, but Ace Jun Chris, これは英語勉強になりますよ。よく聞いててね. That was a little something for me, lads. So, cheers. Have a good week in this mental fucking world that we're living in at the moment. I'll give you another episode next week where we'll start to delve a little bit further, develop more policies, get more ideas going, and it'll be up to us to see if we can't make the better world that other people are seriously failing to do. Alright, cheers, bye bye.